Every time I drive by McDonald's, yesterday we were talking about potatoes and French fries. Every time I drive by McDonald's, I just get this. It never fails. You drive by and all of a sudden you just can taste French fries. There's an old line a friend of mine used to tell me. He's a sportscaster now in Cincinnati, Ohio. But he said you can tell who a liar is by asking a few simple questions. If they say they answer that they never watch TV, they're a liar. If they answer they never eat at McDonald's, they're a liar. There's a whole series of these things because we all do it. And so just I wanted to share that with you quickly. 822, we're at 33. And another just note today that if you're listening, thank you. But if you're having difficulty hearing the program, you've got to get in touch with Mount Harrison Audiology because of Dr. Christine Pickup's commitment. She and her family are honored to be part of the Mini-Cassia community and proud to support local sports, schools, and the Independence Day celebration in Rupert. As a locally owned independent business, your support allows her in turn to help the community. Mount Harrison Audiology, committed to serving each patient and the communities that they live in. Trust your hearing health to the only locally owned hearing healthcare practice in the Magic Valley. Call for your appointment today, 208-312-0957. Ken Menzel is a man familiar with microphones. Hasn't been in the studio in a while, but he's joining us from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department because it varies. You're the guy here for a stretch, and then we've got somebody else for a stretch, and then you're back and
Yep.
rotating.
Well, and with this new position that I'm in, Dan, Tom, and I will actually be doing this together. Sometimes we'll be here together. Sometimes it'll be him. Sometimes it'll be I. We're just kind of bounce that between the two of us. It's a great opportunity for us to get the word out, things that the sheriff's office is involved with.
Are you the guy that's got to drag McGruff around now to all the schools?
I am. Yep.
That sounds like a fun job. In Ada County, they have a separate person who does that, who's hired off the street, and it's the sole responsibility is to get that dog wherever they're going.
So what Dan and I are going to be tackling quite a few different things. It's involving the community relations, as well as crime prevention, schools, um, social media, just a bunch of different things as we work to um, get involved with our community and just keep everybody apprised of what we're doing and what's going on and some of the things that we're concerned about and some of the things that our community can help us with as we look at some certain areas that really affect everybody.
You got one coming up involving drugs, and we're not just talking illegal drugs. We're talking maybe prescriptions people may have that are
Yes.
outdated or expired.
A lot of times you see people who are on hospice that once that person has passed away, that a lot of times there's a lot of drugs that are left behind. People with old prescriptions, whether they went down and had a tooth pulled or some sort of a surgical procedure where there's a medicine cabinet full of drugs that aren't being used. A lot of times we see those types of places broke into. People want the narcotics from there, the opiates and whatnot. So on October 28th, we're going to be participating with the DEA in a National Drug Take Back Day, and people can come to the corner of Blue Lakes and Addison. They're at 5 Points and bring their controlled, non-controlled, over-the-counter substances where we'll collect those, um, and we'll dispose of those. The program is designed to help people remain anonymous, and we'll work very diligently at that, at protecting everyone's anonymity. It's just about disposing of the medications and keeping those out of the hands of people who shouldn't be having them.
But one of the concerns too is that a lot of people with prescription drugs, when they're done, they tend to flush them down the toilets, and that's been a really bad idea because
Yeah, that's problematic too.
it gets into the ground and the groundwater, and then people start all around the city start ingesting this type of stuff if it's down there.
Right. When you look at the quantities that can be potentially flushed, and where that ends back up, whether it's in the groundwater in our rivers and whatnot, it's not the ideal way to dispose of those. There's a better way, and it's involves this National Drug Take Back Day, and we can dispose of those. And I believe that the those narcotics and non-prescription drugs are incinerated so that they don't cause a problem with our waterways.
And the other part of this too is you're concerned about the teenagers because I've read where a lot of the drug abuse we currently see isn't necessarily from marijuana or other stuff they get on the street, but they start by raiding the medicine cabinet.
Yeah, we'll see a lot of pills that are sold, and pills is the big one for teenagers. The problem with the pills, with those types of narcotics, is that it leads to potential heroin use. We know how bad heroin is, and we see an increase of heroin in our community, right along with methamphetamine. So
Yeah, there's a concern about that opioid epidemic growing and growing and
Right.
growing, and this is part of it.
It is. Yes.
You got something else going on too you wanted to mention today as well.
So, as we were previously talking about, one of our responsibilities is we're taking a more aggressive stance with proactive law enforcement and crime prevention. The sheriff's office has partnered with a group called Next Door. Next Door is a website. We see that years ago it used to be McGruff Neighborhood Watch, and people go to these neighborhood watch meetings and things like that. And anymore, people like to be a so-called keyboard warrior, if you will. We work behind in our home, looking at the keyboard and whatnot. And it's an online social media app where people can get to know their neighbors via this Next Door app, if you will. It's designed to put more eyes on, if you will, in your neighborhood, and you see it more as kind of like a social platform where you see anything from people posting, "Have you seen my dog? Have you seen my cat?" And that's where we've seen a lot of use in next doors, people using it kind of as a lost and found for animals and things of that nature. But also looking for, references for, hey, where's a good place to go get your car painted? What restaurants are popular? Um, Looking for a babysitter. Um, just a whole bunch of different things. It's just about people communicating and working within their own network neighborhood and reaching out. And it used to be years and years ago, you knew your neighbors and you'd go out and you'd talk to them. And we've kind of become recluse, if you will, and you don't see that those big neighborhood barbecues, if you will, those gatherings. People, as a society becomes more fast paced, we tend to just look out or be involved with our own. And this is kind of a way, everybody gets on a computer and spends time on a computer, a way to kind of look out for each other and just network with those people around you. And our hope is that as we partner with Nextdoor and we're able to communicate with different neighborhoods this way, that we can put out some information as far as um, crime blog, where what we're seeing as far as burglaries, where we're getting, if there's a concentration of burglaries in a certain area, or auto theft, smash and grabs, things of that nature. And people can kind of say, hey, that's close to my house. Maybe we need to be a little more vigilant in what's going on around our neighborhood.
We got more coming up with Ken Menzel. Short break. We're going to actually be talking a little bit about training, but actually it's training for the media and some law enforcement, which has been an eye opener for some people on the other side, if you will.
Yes, it has.
That's up in a couple of minutes. We're at 32. Ken is joining us from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. We're joined in the studio by Ken Menzel from the Twin Falls County Sheriff's Department, and we're coming up on 8:34. Bill Colley as well on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. So we're at the freezing point today, but this is going to be a warm day into the mid-70s most likely, and then the bottom drops out. But we'll be back into some nice weather next week after a bit of a cool down tomorrow and Saturday. Uh, Ken, one thing we were talking about off air earlier this morning, there was a story out of Charlotte, North Carolina this week, and Glenn Beck's website was doing a story about, reported it, that the Charlotte and Mecklenburg, I guess that's kind of a combined city-county force, department decided to bring in reporters, and what they did, they brought them out to the academy, and the trainees played bad guys. The reporters were given a weight belt, as
Right.
you know, so they're weighted down like a deputy or an officer might be, and then they're told you got to subdue this guy. And sometimes they allow two or three reporters to try and do it. The reporters came away with a profound new respect for what law enforcement is going through.
You're thrust into that kind of a situation and realize that it's a action slash reaction type of scenario, and you only have less than fractions of a second to make a decision that could alter your life for forever and alter somebody else's life for forever. And we teach all of our law enforcement officers that at the end of the day, we want them going home to their families. Um, and and oftentimes is the Monday morning quarterbacks, if you will get together and start, with social media and law enforcement agencies wearing body cams. A lot of our contacts are recorded by citizens that are in the area observing contact that law enforcement has with others. The actions that we have to take are scrutinized heavily anymore by the media, which it didn't used to be that way because we didn't have this technology that we have now. And it's really easy for somebody who has never been involved with law enforcement or has a brother that was involved or some family member, an uncle that was a police officer, and to sit there and listen to the stories of how it used to be or how it is, to jump in with some sort of knowledge about what's going on and put their 2 cents in as to, well, they should have done this or they should have done that. And this article that you're talking about, and I've seen others like that. You can Google or YouTube search that same type of scenario where reporters get that chance to um, be involved with law enforcement and kind of go through a training scenario, if you will. It's really eye opening when you're the one that has to make that split decision and realize, wow, I could really be hurt here. How am I going to protect
Hmm.
myself and neutralize this situation so that everybody's safe? And sometimes the only way to eliminate the threat is through use of force. And sometimes that can be non lethal force. And oftentimes, as we see, it's lethal force. And it's tragic for everyone involved. The families that go through this when they lose a loved one through lethal force that was utilized by law enforcement and the law enforcement officer and their families as well, and the agency. There's a lot of emotion that goes through um, everyone's heart and mind when lethal force has been applied. It's not a pleasant situation for anyone to be involved in, and I think the law enforcement officers who have not been involved in a lethal use of force in their career, they're fortunate, and nobody looks forward to having to use that. Every day we wake up, we put on the uniform and don the badge on our chest and go out and serve and protect our community. The idea is to do so in a way that has a successful outcome for everybody.
And if you've got a vest on and you're carrying a sidearm and you're carrying your radio is hooked to the front of your shirt, and you've got the camera, and so you're a roving office. You're walking with your office attached to you, and you don't know if that person you're dealing with even has a knife or a firearm. It's going to take more than one person to bring that guy down as well. And
Sure.
as you say, subduing them. The public passing by says, "Hey, what are you roughing that guy up for?"
Right.
But without any understanding of what's going on.
Well, and one of the most unknowns, one of the most dangerous things that we're involved with is the traffic stop. We don't necessarily know who we're stopping. I mean, we run the license plate and it can come back to a registered owner, but you don't know if you've got some high school teenager on their way to school. It could be a parent of some child. It could be a guy who's got 17 warrants for his arrest and he sees the red and blues come on and his thought process is not today. And then another, issue that's highly um, heated for law enforcement as we're responding to is domestic violence. You have a lot of heated emotions involved when you respond to a domestic disturbance, and law enforcement shows up, and sometimes, depending on who the person is that's called, we're the most wanted person there, but the other person who didn't call for us, what are you doing here? And those are some of the most highly heated confrontations that we deal with, some of the most dangerous confrontations.
We're going to pick this subject up again at another point, but
Absolutely.
because I think that it gives, if we could do more of this in this area, and the media would be a good place to start because, well, here's a question. We've got people trying to call. Can you stick around through the next segment?
Absolutely.
As I know that sometimes he has to dash off and actually deal with crime. Uh, Caller, look, be patient. We'll take a short break. And Ken will stick around and answer some of your questions in the next 15 minutes on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. We're at 33 right now. Bill Colley with you as well on Top Story.